One decision at 14 changed the entire direction of my life. And it came down to whether or not I walked downstairs wearing a tie. In July or August of 1980, my family moved from Atlanta to Louisville, Kentucky. I had just finished 8th grade, and suddenly it was time to figure out where I was going to go to high school. Now, when we got to Louisville, we quickly learned that Jefferson County had busing. And if you've never experienced busing back then, let me explain it to you. Based on the first letter of your last name, you could end up at one school your freshman and sophomore year, and then another school downtown your junior and senior. And for our family, that didn't make much sense because mom and dad always said, we played every sport we could possibly play. And shoot, I was right in the middle of all that. So the idea of constantly changing schools, teammates, coaches, friends, just didn't feel right. So we started looking at private schools. The first one we toured was Kentucky Country Day. And listen, the second I walked in there, I knew this place was not for me. Honestly, I failed the entrance exam on purpose. I just filled it in. Then we went to Male High School. Male was impressive. It's a traditional school, strong academics, super nice people. I could absolutely see myself going there. But then we went to Trinity. Now, I've never been to a Catholic high school before. So from the second we walked in, everything felt a little different. Not fancy, just different. And then they took us into the football locker room. And I remember stopping dead in my tracks because all over the walls, these giant plywood footballs representing every state championship season. And painted on each of the footballs were the scores from every game during that year. And then up on the wall was this massive helmet logo with 4 words. It said, pride, discipline, loyalty, achievement. Man, I was impressed. I had never seen anything like that before. So after touring both schools, Mom and Dad and I sat down that night to decide what I was going to do. And to their credit, they wanted me to make the decision. So I finally looked at them. I said, tomorrow morning, I'll either come downstairs wearing a tie or I won't. And I had absolutely no idea that decision would change my life forever. The next morning, I came downstairs wearing a tie. And just like that, I was headed to Trinity High School. Now, my first day there was eye-opening for several reasons. The first obvious thing was I looked around the classroom and it was all dudes. Now, we had a few female teachers, but most of them were nuns. So outside of the cafeteria ladies, it was basically just dudes everywhere. And look, I had gone to North Springs in Atlanta for 8th grade, and let me tell you something. There were plenty of pretty girls at North Springs. Not at Trinity, at least not during the school hours. Because when school let out that first day, I walked outside, headed toward the field house for football practice. And suddenly, there were like 200 girls standing in the parking lot from Sacred Heart. I remember thinking, this might not be so bad. This might actually work. The classic Catholic school uniforms, classy, cute. I thought, this can't be too bad. So I headed into the field house for football practice. Now, I'm new. I have no idea where I'm going. And I walk through the varsity locker room. And I see this guy named Larry Hester. And I swear he looked like he walked straight out of the NFL. And that's when it hit me. This was not football back in Georgia, North Springs. Now, don't get me wrong. Georgia football is serious football. But at my school, guys didn't look like that guy. So I gear up and we head out to practice in the field behind the old Sears building. And the coach walks up to me and says, "Hey, Barton, what position do you play?" And I said, offensive guard and linebacker. He goes, "Okay, head over there to the offense. See Coach Ellenbrand." From that day forward, over the next 4 years, I never played one down of defense. Sometimes I still wonder what would have happened if I just said linebacker first. But that's how things worked at Trinity. Nobody really played both ways. At North Springs or at my brother's school, Crestwood, guys played offense and defense because they only had like maybe 40 players on the team. At Trinity, we had over 90 players. So it was a completely different world. Now, keep in mind, these guys had already been practicing for like 3 or 4 weeks before I got there. So I'm the new guy. And the very first thing the coach does is throw me onto the board drills against the other offensive linemen. Now, listen, I'm not trying to brag, but I had so much adrenaline pumping through my body. I was determined to prove that I belong there. And I started blowing guys off the board. I mean, I was coming off that thing like my life depended on it. Afterwards, the coach grabbed my face mask. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Barton, you like to hit, don't you?" I said, "Yes, sir." And that was my very first football practice at Trinity. Now, my freshman year, our team went 10-0. And what's funny is I just left North Springs in Atlanta, and our 8th grade team there also was undefeated, but unscored on. Now, at Trinity, we got scored on, but not much. I remember one game freshman year against Central. We beat them 71-0. And competition in our family was just part of life, especially with older brothers. And Pop fed that competitiveness in a lot of ways. One thing he always used to tell us, you better win every wind sprint at the end of practice. And man, I took that seriously. I always felt like he was watching me during the sprints, and I did not want to disappoint him. Found out later, he actually was watching. Not every day, obviously, but sometimes he would swing by that old practice field behind Sears and watch me without me seeing him. And when he finally told me that, I was so glad I always ran the sprints as hard as I could. Now, Trinity wasn't just serious about football. It was very serious about education. I might not have been, but they sure were. And about my second week there, our athletic director, Coach Lampley, he was our PE teacher. Now, Coach Lampley, he was this big barrel-chested, big, strong, loud, big, very, very Tennessee man. And he had been the head football coach for years before becoming athletic director. And after I left Trinity, he actually became the head football coach again, which was honestly kind of a bummer for me because Coach Lampley was special. But I didn't know how special yet. We were in PE learning volleyball. Now, apparently, there's a proper way to hit a volleyball and improper ways to hit a volleyball. Well, the ball comes my way, and instead of me hitting it correctly, like dipping, I launch the thing across the gym. Coach Lampley yells, "Barton, get over here." So I run over there, and he says, "Drop and give me 20. So I knock out 20 push-ups as fast as I can, and I pop back up a little too fast. And he says, "Drop and give me 20 more. So now I do 20 more. And when I get back up, he says, "Get down to my office." Now, his office was underneath the gym. It was like a dungeon. So I'm sitting down there waiting for him, trying to figure out if I'm about to die. And suddenly he comes busting through the door. And he reaches over, grabs a baseball bat, and starts hitting it on his hand over and over again, just staring at me. I was terrified. I'm thinking, where in the world am I? This man is about to beat me to death with a baseball bat. Instead, he looks at me and says, "Barton, you remind me a lot of myself when I was your age, full of piss and vinegar, always trying to show people how strong you are." Then he told me something I never forgot. He said he saw a lot of potential in me, and he didn't want me wasting it by refusing to follow the rules. But let me tell you something. That talk stuck with me. I was scared to death at the time, but he was trying to teach me something. And believe me, he made his point. That was quite a welcome to PE class at Trinity High School. And honestly, Trinity became so much more than football for me. It became friendships, brotherhood, life lessons. Guys like Todd, Sean, and Willis, Tim, the other Todd, Scott, Kenny, and on and on. Some of the greatest friendships of my life came out of that place. And trust me, there are many more Trinity stories coming. So thanks for watching Stu's Stories, and thank you for following me and subscribing. See you next time.